Thank you, and thank you for all the music that our house band is providing for us throughout the week. And Sally Johnson for leading us in worship. We appreciate her. Younger Next Year is a book that was recommended to me by a friend. Its subtitle is A Guide to Living Like 50 Until You're 80 and Beyond. One of the authors, Chris Crowley, is a retired lawyer pushing 80, and the other, Henry S. Lodge, is a physician in his 40s. Chris's aging body brought them together as patient and physician, and then they began to collaborate on how to help people live fully in the last third of their lives. Its premise is to debunk the conventional wisdom that we begin a long slide into old age and death at about 50. And there's not much you can do about it. The authors refute this conventional wisdom and say that lifestyle can eliminate over 50% of all illness and injuries in the last third of our lives, and about 70% of most aging difficulties can be forestalled or relieved with proper care. Weakness, sore joints, lousy balance, which causes broken bones, and a general feeling of crankiness are not inevitable as we age. The authors insist that our bodies are either moving toward growth or decaying. Of course, accidents and illness can strike any of us at any age. But when it comes to growing older, we have choices about how healthy and happy we will be. However, this is not an address about physical health, although I would commend the book to you. Instead, as I read the book, I began to think about the body of Christ, this old body of Christ of which we are all a part. You know, the body of Christ is old, 2011 years old. And the United Methodist Church is old, 227 years old. Some of our churches in Minnesota are old, 150 or 155 years old. When my home church celebrated its 100th anniversary, my brother made T-shirts that said, "Does this look like a 100-year-old body to you?" One of my family members who recently died at the ripe age of 90-something refused to buy one because he didn't want anybody to think he was actually 100 already. But the T-shirt was meant to remind them that the church isn't a building or even the people presently attending it, but it is the eternal and renewing body of Christ, no matter how old it is. In addition to Younger Next Year, I also came across another study called the Longevity Project. These two studies had different ways of describing what causes healthfulness as we age, but the basic concepts were the same. I want to share with you just a couple of factors in health and longevity as an analogy to the body of Christ of which we are part. In the Longevity Project, one of the main factors in determining a long and healthy life was conscientiousness. Yes, conscientiousness, as defined as persistence, prudence, hard work. Conscientiousness is what causes people to practice habits that keep them healthy in body, mind, and soul. Well, it struck me that we have a word in our own lexicon for conscientiousness: discipleship. In order to have strong and healthy faith and to be a strong and healthy church, we must conscientiously practice holy, healthy habits. The authors of Younger Next Year insist that in the years to come, people who don't exercise 6 or 7 times a week will be looked upon by the medical profession the same way people are who smoke today. A great deal of concern about the harm that it does to your health. Likewise, a healthy church needs to have a system of discipleship in place to help its individuals grow in faith, to exercise their faith. It doesn't just happen. It takes intentional faith development in us as individuals to have a healthy faith, and it takes intentional faith development on the part of our churches for us to have a healthy faith. But when we practice intentional faith development, it is like strength training for the body. People can tell if we have been spiritually working out, developing a good cardio system because we bear the fruit of the Spirit in our relationships. For instance, a sign of healthy, rigorous faith in a congregation is the ability to forgive and to be forgiven. The ability to forgive and to be forgiven keeps us healthy in body and spirit. Even in our bodies, when we're filled with resentment, anger, and hatred, we carry it places. In our shoulders, in our stomachs. Our blood pressure goes up. It causes damage. People unable to forgive and let go are usually not as physically healthy as those who are, according to these studies and some others. Forgiveness involves intentionally cultivating spiritual vitality so that we can learn to love our neighbor as ourselves. As Henry Nouwen once wrote, forgiveness is the name of love practiced among people who love poorly. The hard truth is that all of us love poorly. As a result, we all need to learn to forgive and to be forgiven. Chronic conflict in our churches is rooted in the accumulation of hurt and grief and anger between people, disappointment at a pastor, frustration at the annual conference, and incredible loss in many of our communities. Chronic conflict drives more people away from our churches than all of those hot-button issues, and we become weak, sore, off balance, generally cranky, and nobody wants to be around us. But when we learn to forgive and to be forgiven, we become healthier and happier, as well as more Christ-like. But you know, we always hear this Christian teaching telling us that we must forgive, but we don't always teach the practices of how to forgive. When was the last time you had a workshop in your church teaching people the practices of forgiveness? Recently, I've been wondering, what if we made teaching and practicing forgiveness the central faith development task of every local church? How might any of us be healthier and happier next year if we learn forgiveness and practice forgiveness throughout the year? Forgiveness is just one aspect of intentional faith development, but it's one aspect that helps us to have healthy faith and a healthy church. Dr. Kenda Creasy-Dean, our speaker this year, who is the Associate Professor of Youth, Church, and Culture at Princeton Theological Seminary, will teach us more about how to be healthier in our faith and in our local churches. Another key factor in being healthy as we grow older is to be involved in meaningful work or service. Never quit working, one of the studies recommended. And we just had this wonderful service of retirement. Well, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't retire from your means of employment, but we forestall and minimize the difficulties of aging when we have a sense of meaningful work or service, something that connects us with the greater world, where we know we make a difference, and actually that someone is relying on us. As a United Methodist Body of Christ in Minnesota, we have experienced decline in membership in a steady rate over the years. We've not turned that around. The temptation for many of us is to turn inward instead of outward, focused on survival instead of reaching out with the saving grace of Christ as our faith teaches us. Vitality comes when we're outwardly focused, seeing ourselves able to make a difference in the world and reaching a goal that stretches every muscle and cell, every individual and local church within this body. We have been given an opportunity to strengthen our faith and to stretch through the challenge to save 180,000 lives from malaria. Tomorrow, we will learn more about Imagine No Malaria and how all of us as individuals and congregations will be involved. But for now, let me tell you that I think our challenge to raise $1.8 million, of which $600,000 has already been pledged, is exactly what the great physician is ordering for our health and strength as the body of Christ in Minnesota. Think about it. 180,000 of our brothers and sisters in Africa are counting on United Methodists in Minnesota for help. A healthy faith and a healthy church reach out and give to others, neighbors, near and far. Healthy physical bodies and spirits also have strong social networks. Having people around you that you care about and who care for you, friends, family, and community. For all that the authors of Younger Next Year pushed exercise 6 or 7 days a week, they equally, or maybe even more, along with the Longevity Project, emphasize the need for community. In fact, the Longevity Project says that women who are involved in a religious community live longer than women who aren't, because they have a strong social network. Give it up for the church ladies.